Hey guys, it's Deep Dive with Daniel, and of course we have Daniel across the seas. And yes, hi, big smile. And his blog this week was "Oil and Conflict: Understanding the Financial Impact of Geopolitical Crises." That's crises, not crisis. So we're basically, I mean, the reason this was brought up, of course, is because oil and gas has really been kind of a weird trek this uh, really last 2 or 3 years, but it's like nothing. There's no kind of conflict that is really just pushing the gas back up where it was. And then is it manipulation or is it geopolitical events? So anyway, that's what you talk about in this blog. And so tell me what that link is between geopolitics and oil slash gas.
Yeah, so I mean, pretty much anytime there's geopolitical tension in one of these regions, predominantly, kind of the Middle East, we saw it with Russia, Ukraine as well.
Mhm.
It, quite often, at least initially, makes oil spike, right? You got one part
Yeah.
of the world that is, kind of under attack, if you will. They're not producing oil as much. People are worried about what the oil production is going to look like, if refineries are going to get blown up and such. And so you see a
True.
big spike, which often results after the fact then of overproduction in other parts of the world. Then these other parts kind of come back online eventually, and then it reverts back to the mean. But it definitely, causes some tension in the beginning.
Yeah, here in the U.S., of course, one of the important reports that always comes out is the SOR, the Strategic Oil Reserve. But we are at a point now that we are the top producer, I think now, and so we don't rely as much as we have in the Middle East. Uh, I think that all started when there was really an agenda to try to push out fossil fuels, and it's still there. But when it first started, I remember, and EVs were, everybody get into EVs, kind of like they're doing AI right now. But I remember gas went up pretty heavily, and I think
Hmm.
that was an intentional thing to say, okay, well, see, you can't pay that much for gas, you got to go to EVs. Conspiracy theory. Um, so really, we have enough to handle if there's any a big crisis now, we have enough to handle. I think this is what the narrative is that we have enough here in the US to handle our business, if you will, when it comes to this, even if something does blow up literally in the Middle
Yep.
East. And it's not because now everybody's driving EVs and so we don't need gas. It's not that at all. So I know that might be the narrative, but that's not what it is.
No, I mean,
So
I
look,
mean, for better, for worse, depending on your political views, Trump
yeah,
definitely kind of reopened that floodgates. And, like you were saying, I think we export more now than we import for oil, which was not the case a while ago.
right, right.
And
We're very
that's
dependent.
while we still have fluctuating oil prices, like definitely helps us stabilize and not be as susceptible to like the global supply chain that gets affected by it.
Yep, yep. So in the past, we have had events that have happened that really have affected that price and made it really bad on everybody because once that goes up, that's how we deliver things. That's how we fly things. That's basically we use that oil and gas to make those things happen. I mean, mostly. So it does matter when these big events in the past have happened and have driven the price of gas up. So I think you started back in '73 with your timeline.
Yes, so 1973 oil crisis during the Yom Kippur War. That's a
I had a
mouthful.
problem with that too,
Um,
trust me.
that's why
Yom
you said
Kippur, Yom
1973,
Kippur.
huh? um, a lot of the Arab members of OPEC imposed an oil embargo, which made
Mhm.
oil prices go up, 4x in a very short amount of time.
Right, right.
So the different members of the world, depending on what's going on, can cause really big disruptions in the oil market. You had us invade Iraq in 2003, and
Before you go any
we
further though,
yeah.
you're too young. You're too young for this, but in '76, I remember I was young then too, by the way, but I remember, there were huge lines, and that's basically when inflation really went way up. Was in that Jimmy Carter 75, 76. those years. So, and it was pretty much spurred on by this what you're talking about here. So yeah, you can go ahead to 2003 now.
I remember my mom telling me about
Yep.
the oil lines. She goes, "Yeah, you'd
Yes.
go and you'd have no idea if you were gonna get any, and, you
Right.
just wait in a line down the block. You had to, like, go on
Yeah.
your day, right?"
People would actually carry gas cans. They had to around with them. So
Mhm. So next we got the Iraq War in
mhm.
2003. So us invading a part of the world that had some of the largest oil production going on at the time. Dramatically saw a rise in oil prices. We don't include it in this article, but famously, our invasion of Afghanistan after
True.
9/11, even
Yeah.
though very kind of publicly came out afterwards that we were there to protect our oil.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then, more recently, we had the Russia-Ukraine conflict of Russia invading Ukraine. Us kind of, doing the reverse of what happened to us in the 70s, having an embargo and cutting off Russia from the global oil markets, which was a bit ironic because that was the best Russia's economy had done in the
Right.
last, few decades,
Right.
because it became such a hot commodity because they produced so much and, that pipeline got blown up, that it
Yep.
actually was in their favor.
Yeah. We'll see how that happened or why. Those backdoor
Yeah.
meetings. Yeah, I mean, by the way, going back to that Iraq war, isn't that or was it Afghanistan where we actually dropped that missile that went underground and blew up things? And the only reason I bring that up is because Israel has talked about going in to Iran and or Iran, and I don't know how they say it, but they're talking about going in there and possibly they're going after nuclear facilities or even going after the oil. And the nuclear facilities are underground. I think you have to get to them underneath the ground. So I think about that. We have the capabilities to just not we do, but by proxy, Israel might use something like that to get underneath to where they're making nuclear weapons, basically, are the starts of it. So anyway,
Little
that's
scary idea of blowing up a nuclear facility. I don't like
isn't
that one.
it? It's the Simpsons time on steroids.
Right.
um, so yeah, Russia, Ukraine. It's the thing there is also it's been a conflict for a lot longer than what we're saying it's been a conflict for. I mean, it's gone back and forth for I don't know how many years, decades, maybe. This isn't a new thing, but then when they invaded into, I guess, again, they made it like it was some brand new conflict between those two. But they've been at it for a while, so
Mhm.
it's interesting to know what the narrative is behind there and what went where and why, who's moving those chess pieces worldwide as you say, to maybe take advantage of events, which is what the stock market's all about, right? Never met a crisis they can't make money off of, or something like that. There's some saying that you institutes say. Uh,
Don't let a good
um,
crisis go to waste.
yeah, there it is. See, I mean, it's probably in a frame in your room somewhere. I don't know.
I have it tattooed on the inside of my leg. Never
That's
forget.
it. That's right. So you mentioned 4 things, about financial ripples, and basically how oil does affect the stock market, speaking of that. So I wasn't trying to segue, but here we go. What are those 4 things?
Yeah, so first one is inflation.
Mhm.
So this one's pretty simple. Oil costs more money. Everything is powered. Large freight. Airplanes. Last mile transportation, all powered by oil. The price of that goes up.
Yep.
All the price of those things goes up, which makes your product more expensive,
And then you
and
gotta pay
thus,
wages more and everything.
yep.
Yeah, I mean, it just moves on and yeah, go ahead, to the next one.
So next would be stock market volatility, right?
Mhm.
Rising oil prices just kind of leads to uncertainty. With that, things get more expensive. Talked about inflation.
Mhm.
It can affect the job market, affect consumer spending, right? They're spending more
Right.
money on oil. They're not spending as much money as at Walmart. And so, that can affect the performance of companies and, ultimately the stock market.
Yeah, margins. I mean, it's all about margins. You make something more
Hmm.
expensive that's in that formula. whether it be wages or whether it be, transportation, delivery of your goods, and then everything just it's a ripple effect, as you said here, financial ripple effect. So you said currency fluctuations going up and down. I guess from a worldwide forex perspective is what you're talking about,
Yeah, so we have the petrodollar, or otherwise known as the US dollar. So,
right?
up until, recently, most oil was traded in US dollars. Oil costs more money. Countries and companies need to have more dollars. They buy more dollars. That increases the price of the dollar.
Right.
And that causes other currencies in relationship to go down, or if other countries, they're trading in their local currency, it can go up as well. So it can cause a lot of, kind of, in a way, inflation as well in that perspective from the fluctuation of currencies.
Sure, sure. That's why the Fed has to be very careful what they do. And as you talked about before, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but good old Powell, I think he has too much control. But the interest rates will affect everything in a business, affect their margin, and they use that. They only have a couple of tools, as they say, and one is to raise the rates up or down. And so by raising rates up, you said that basically that will help push down inflation in
Hmm.
general, so or push down the economy. So we'll see if we have to go through that again. something
Yeah,
tells
right.
me something tells me we might, especially if that bull market that some people are trying to push happens, because then your
Not
upper
me, not
end,
me.
no, not at all, and then the upper end, your 20% wealth is doing just fine, and the rest of us are seeing where we're gonna eat our next meal. All right, so we're gonna move on. Future, you are you predicting something here? What's going on?
I can't say I'm predicting anything, but there's
Yeah.
definitely kind of a lot out in the ether that is concerning. And a
Mhm.
lot of it, kind of does come back to a lot of this oil. So, we have the Israel Middle East conflict going on right now, right? They're, more or less at war with Iran. Now they're kind of fighting Yemen, and this part of the world's a
Palestine.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I mean, I feel like
Lebanon. Yeah.
they've kind of moved on from Palestine. They've leveled that one,
For
getting
now,
rid of
yeah,
it
yeah.
there.
That's right.
Um, and so they're kind of moving on to Iran, the bigger player that's backing a lot of these militant groups, as you're talking about, like
Mhm.
looking at their nuclear facilities and oil production.
Right.
And even this part of the world, it's the Strait of Hormuz, or however you say it, has 20% of the world's oil flow that goes through that region, right, through like oil tankers and whatnot.
Yep.
So if they won't, decide to do anything in regards to that, pretty, 20% is a very large chunk of the world's oil production.
Well, there's a
Um,
strait, right? A strait of, that's very important. Would you say
yeah,
what's it called?
Hormuz,
Oh,
Hormuz.
that's what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very
Um,
important, very important. But yeah, I
so
mean,
the
it's go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, it's the danger to me is not necessarily, um, Israel taking care of business and exacting revenge on what all started. It's more about if it actually, oops, turns into a much more wider area that's being affected. If you get multiple
Mhm.
countries involved, that's when I think everything will react. Oil prices as well as our stock market because of it. So
Well, yeah, so I
whatever
mean
we can,
that's the issue, right? It's starting to
yeah,
expand into
yeah,
other,
exactly.
you know,
Yeah, they're not
they've
done.
gone beyond the initial target.
And there's nobody really that's I think that's part of it too is our policy here, foreign policy in the US hasn't been the greatest, and it's been more of how can we help you no matter what you've done to us or anybody else. I just
Mhm.
let us just send you money. Too nice in my opinion. Uh including China. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that is something that coming up could be a big deal is
Yeah,
whoever's going to be in
definitely.
charge, if they are in charge, it's not some, puppeteering thing going on, but whoever is gonna be at the top, what's gonna happen? that's going to be different than where we were the last 4 years, or is it going to be more the same? And that could be bad too. So either way could be bad.
Mhm.
So popcorn and Coke. So I, you give caution, and so you're saying during uncertain times, people who invest should do what? They
Buy
should.
ETFs.
But you go to the small channel stuff and just be safe right there. I mean, is that how you're hedging? What are you talking about? Again, we're not financial advisors, by the way. I have to say that again here, but just in your experience that you've seen others do, maybe at the old investment company you used to work for. What would you say that they are going to do if this actually becomes more than just a regional crisis?
I mean, I think we've seen
Besides
when
ETFs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, when Russia invaded Ukraine, we saw Biden release oil from the strategic oil reserve, which, you know, politically nothing against Biden, but like I think was is not the right decision. The strategic oil reserve is not there to reduce oil prices for the average consumer. It's there for in case of emergency for,
Yeah, it's not. I didn't think it was
war against the
strategic.
United States,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like
Not strategic for other countries, but
yeah, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they do something more like that. Honestly, I think if there was a larger regional conflict, you'd see them cut rates.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
you'd probably see the dollar surge as people fly back to it for safety, which historically has an inverse context to the performance of the S&P 500. But I'm not a
Yep.
financial advisor, so you can Google what that looks like.
Well, and as we talked about in After the Bell a little earlier, the it looks like things are curving back up to maybe do exactly what you just said. So maybe we
Mhm.
are going to have a conflict, a big conflict. We'll see. Thanks, Daniel. That gives us things to think about, especially this next month before we hire somebody else to run the country and the world, basically. So this is important stuff, and this is the last we're going to hear of WTI crude or Brent. I have a feeling that's going to come to the fore here in the next month, pretty a lot. I'll just say that. So I will see you next time, Daniel, and next time on After the Bell. And if you want to see little clips of that, by the way, we do a whole After the Bell segment because we talk about these things too within After the Bell, but we also do little clips. So if you don't have time to sit there and watch an hour's worth, just look for those clips that we do that kind of pull out some of the small parts so you can get a good idea of what we do there. And we did talk about oil. So thanks, Daniel. I'll see you next week.
See you, Darren.